I kind of wanted to get into the R in CRT. So you have
Yeah,
CT, then you have critical race theory. Maybe at a very basic level, define what what the Marxists mean by race as opposed to a Christian talking about race.
right. Well, critical theory somewhere along the line became critical race theory. The assumptions are still Marxist and still errant, but you have people like Derek Bell, the legal scholar, who is an influence on Barack Obama, and Kimberly Crenshaw and others developing the racial aspect of it, but it's still essentially Marxist. So about 2 years ago, one of the leaders of Black Lives Matter came on YouTube and did a video, and she said, "We are trained Marxists." Now you might be thinking, what does that mean, trained Marxist? Would someone admit being an untrained Marxist? What she means is we're activists, we're revolutionaries. We want to bring down the whole system, right? So the idea is that if you are Black, you are oppressed. If you are Latino, Latina, you are oppressed. There's this general category of people of color are oppressed simply by being who they are. So it's neo-Marxism or cultural Marxism with a very strong racial component added to the economic component. And the Marxists, ever since day one, have tried to enlist disenfranchised minorities. The Communist Party, for decades and decades, tried to enlist African Americans to their cause in the United States and had pretty much failed. But they're looking for people who are discontent, maybe haven't done that well in society, and they capitalize on resentment and envy and a fix that seems just and seems right, which is not a fix at all, which is to burn down the system, destroy private property, destroy the profit motive, have everything controlled by the state, who will equitably bring about social peace and equality and so on. And where Marxism has taken hold around the world, it never has done that. Let's think of the Soviet Union and Lenin's use of Marxism and the use of Marxism by Mao Zedong in China, or Pol Pot in Cambodia, or the Castros in Cuba, or what's going on now in Venezuela. Marxism never ennobles or empowers people. It oppresses people. In fact, it tends to kill people. Some estimate that 100 million people were killed by their own civil governments in the 20th century through Marxism. 100 million. That's in the Black Book of Communism that came out about 20 years ago. Now, why is that? It's because there's no God. It's a thoroughly godless worldview. So there's no fear of God. So what matters is political revolution and this idea of some future utopia. So if you're not with the revolutionary vanguard, that is, if you're not one of the trained Marxists, then you suffer from what they call false consciousness. You don't understand the world, and you can't be talked out of your viewpoint. You have to be silenced. To use our language now, you have to be canceled. But cancellation can get very serious in terms of imprisonment, even in terms of execution. So it is not the American ideal of a marketplace of ideas. However imperfectly we work that out in our history, we have the First Amendment, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, all right? Critical race theory does not hold to that as an ideal. In fact, it thinks that's a fraud. That's a joke, because the people that wrote the Declaration of Independence and wrote the Constitution were white slave owners. So that in itself just discredits the whole thing as a farce, which it does not, because what they wrote was generally true and significant. And sometimes people can write better than they live. Thomas Jefferson was conflicted about slavery. In many ways, he wanted to free slaves, but there were a lot of historical pressures on him. And
A lot of political pressures too.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So what critical race theory does is it gives a storyline for America, race, economics, and justice. It's pretty simplistic. It's easy to understand. And if you understand it, you get angry, especially if you are a person of color. But even if you're a white person, a lot of what drives all this is what the Black historian Shelby Steele calls white guilt. A lot of liberal white folks just feel guilty by virtue of being white. They've been the recipients of unjust privilege and benefits. And so they want to radically rearrange society, destroy the free market, take away freedom of speech in order to empower those who have supposedly been systemically oppressed. And my basic vision in this book is that because of the fall, human beings do exploit each other, and racism exists because of the fall. There's exactly one human race. God made everyone from one man. There's one God, one human race, two genders. We're all fallen, one Savior. Let's do the math on these things, all right? So there's not a multiplicity of races. There's one race with different histories, different backgrounds, different nations of origin, and all these things. And so a Christian view says that we are all made in the image and likeness of God, so we bear unique, irreducible value. We have a philosophical reason to hold that. And we also believe that every human being is selfish and sinful. So people will gain for themselves, and people like them, unjust power. But in the United States, we have a history of addressing these things. Think of the sad situation in the Civil War. We had about 250,000 Union troops died to free the slaves in the Civil War. Think of the civil rights movement to deal with the inequities of the Jim Crow period. And think of the betterment of people of color in the United States. We had an African-American president for 2 terms. Whether you liked him or not, the fact that he was elected, I think, was very significant. So the Black Lives Matter people say things like the civil rights movement was really a sham. It didn't accomplish very much that was good at all. People like Derek Bell will say that. So critical race theory, Black Lives Matter people will say it's not radical enough. So you see, Martin Luther King believed in American ideals. When he spoke at the Capitol in 1963 or 4, he talked about the magnificent documents of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And he said, we're here to hold America accountable to the ideals of these documents. He didn't say burn it down. He didn't say the system is corrupt. He didn't say America is based on slavery, so we have to destroy it and start over again. He was trying to reclaim the brilliance of these American founding principles. But don't be deceived. The people who are animated by critical race theory, the Black Lives Matter people, the Antifa people, do not hold that at all.
Ideas have consequences, bad ideas have victims, and few ideas in recent history are worse than wokeism, a social and mental disease that is wreaking havoc on sanity and common sense. That's why the upcoming special edition of the Christian Research Journal tackles this dangerous ideology head-on. To receive your copy, visit equip.org, that's equip.org, or call 888-7000-CRI, that's 888-7000-CRI.